All right. Well, thanks for joining us again on another episode of Lessons in Lost Love and Resilience. I'm Arik Housley, and most people know the story that I lost my daughter, Elena, in a mass shooting back in 2018. So it's nice to have other people on here to talk about our stories of grief, loss, love, resilience, community, you name it. And you know what's fun is sometimes it's not always. Most people think this is always about the loss of a loved one. So I'm excited about today's guest, my friend Julie Morales here in Napa, and she's got a great story about community and family and hope and resilience and so many things too. So Julie, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. And can I just please say congratulations on your book?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's
So
been going good.
exciting.
I just got a fun message from a friend like a half an hour ago where he texted me and he says, I'm on my way. I'm boarding a flight to Phoenix. And he says, and then he takes a picture, and it's a picture of the book sitting on a chair. And I said, "Oh, are you going for some light reading on the flight, or is that somebody else's?" And he said, "No, somebody else just had it like sitting on a
Oh,
chair." And I was like, I almost asked him like, "Go see who it
wow.
is," you know.
Yeah, no
So
kidding. Are
sales
they
have
from
been better than
Napa?
I expected. Yeah, exactly. Are they from Napa? Where are they from? And just out of curiosity. So anyway,
Yeah,
well, thanks for joining us, Julie. I know you have a really interesting story and one with so much hope and things that are awesome to share. So why don't you
yeah.
give us a little background of Tony's story?
Yes, and it's so funny because he said, "Are you going to be talking about me today?" And I said, "Yes, this is my side because there's always two sides when you're caring for somebody, and rarely do you get the caretaker side, and that's such an important part, and it's something I've thought about with so many people. Like they just kind of get pushed to the side, and it's all about the person going through the situation. But and I've had a lot of loss in my life too. But I thought, like you said, let's bring a story that is about resilience, and that's really what this story is about. And it all starts really crazy because it was 2007, and we just had our baby, Sophia, and we had some issues with her. She had a hemangioma, so it's a subcutaneous, basically tumor in her cheek that was growing underneath the skin, and so we were kind of dealing with that. It was a whole thing. So that was happening. We also bought a new house, and life was happening, right? And next thing you know, we're getting ready for the move, and it's funny because I wrote in the journal everything that happened, and I got up this morning early and I was reading it and I was putting myself back into that time, and it was such a crazy time back then. And Tony had a really crazy thing, and it's called Guillain-Barré. And I have this book because a lot of people are like, "What the heck is that?" I didn't know what it was either. And come to find out, there are quite a few people in Napa that have had it. And Tony wasn't the only one. But it was the day that we were moving, and we packed up our baby and took her to grandma's. And next thing you know, Tony's, he was kind of fighting a cold, and then he had all these weird symptoms. And his mother is a nurse, and she said, those sound like some neurological symptoms, and the Queen of the Valley is the best place to go for that. So we headed to the Queen, and it was October 1st, and we would leave that hospital on December 22nd. It was a 3-month stay. The first day was just kind of finding out what was wrong with him and what was going on, and did some tests. And then we asked the doctor to write this down because we had no idea what this is. And it's really weird how to say it. And it's basically the name of the man that had it, and it was discovered by him. And we go back to his mom's and go, "What is this?" And she's like, "Oh my gosh," the look on her face was not the look we wanted. She said, "I hope it's not that." Well, it was. And basically, and I can kind of tell you what this is because I was reading this morning that it's a neurological thing. So basically, it's a disease that affects about 2 in 100,000 people in the year worldwide. So it's kind of a
Mm,
crazy thing. And what happened was in a matter of 3 days, he was completely paralyzed from the neck down. And then he was intubated and had a trach for probably almost the whole 2 months that we were in ICU. This happened, of course, while we were moving. So our house was full of boxes, and we just basically left everything there. And thank goodness my mother-in-law was helpful in having the baby because Sophia was 7 months old. So I had a new
Hmm.
baby, I had a new house, and I had a husband that I had no idea what was going on. So I, packed up my bag every day and I went to the hospital with him and just watched this disease completely take over his body. When he was intubated, obviously he couldn't speak, so we were using flashcards and alphabet boards, and that was the only way that we could speak to each other because, he couldn't even move his head, he couldn't move his hands. It was, we laugh all the time now because the nurse would tell him, if you want to get Julie's attention, go. So if we hear that now, the click click, we both start laughing because it was almost irritating to me after a while when I'm sorry, I'm losing some sun here. When he would make that noise and I was like, "Oh my gosh, leave me alone. What do you want?" Poor thing. And I'm sitting there in the hospital bed with a magazine and just trying to keep my spirits up. And he's literally laying there paralyzed. Uh the
You
nurses.
said that there's, because I want to say is I've heard of a couple of other people here in Napa that have had it, and I was curious too. But I want to say one, it was more like half of his face had gone, almost like he'd had a stroke, and it just, but
Yeah.
cognitively everything was normal. And then as time went, that changed. Is it or is it always kind of paralyzing? Am I thinking of somebody incorrectly on that, or
So at the time that Tony was in the hospital, there was a woman named Jocelyn, and she was in there, and she was pregnant. Oh my gosh, like I thought we were going through a horrible thing. They were going through something even more traumatic than we were going through. And she was paralyzed too. I don't know if that's more like a stroke thing because this affects your whole entire nervous system. So basically
okay,
what happens is the myelin sheaths that cover our nerves go away. So it's a complete paralyzation. So Tony was from neck down. There's a guy in town who was another part of our story because we were just so happy to have them in our life. Mark Alexion. I don't know if you know who he was. Him and his wife Katie were just very supportive to us during that because during that time was the chef's market. So I was doing the chef's market and all of those things were happening. And Mark heard about this and him and his wife came to the hospital to see us and just help us through this experience because we were just completely, dumbfounded, just had no idea how to handle it, had no idea if he was going to live or die, had no idea if he was going to walk again or talk again. I mean, he completely had to relearn everything all over again, how to swallow, how to, move, everything. It was complete paralyzation. So,
did the doctors know what it was fairly quickly, or how long did it take for them
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
diagnose it?
When we went in for the test, they did a lumbar puncture to get some fluids and see how he was, and that it came back right away that that's what it was. And it's something that, like I said, doesn't happen, very rarely to people. And so it's kind of crazy because when this was happening, there was a benefit for us, and lots of people were showing up out of the woodworks that had it back in the 70s because they didn't really know what it was. So people were actually in the hospital for months and months because they didn't know how to treat it. And this book that I have, I was able to read about it and learn, all the things that happened. But Tony's case was a little different because they do this. It's called a immunization, global IVS, something that I can't remember the word right now. But they put him on a drip, and it was 5 days. And I remember the late. It was like $10,000 for this thing. And they said this is going to help. This is going to work. And 5 days after that went happen, nothing happened. And I'll never forget the day that the neurologist took me and his mother and father out into the lobby. I think my mom was with us too. She's passed now. And said, "I'm not happy." This is what the neurologist is saying to me. And I'm like, well, what do you want me to do? Like, I'm not the doctor. So I said, "Well, what do we do?" And she said, "Well, we do another round." And I was like, "Well, what if that doesn't work?" And she said, "Well, then we'll figure it out from there." And I just kind of, that was the day I kind of lost it. And we were at the Queen, and they come into your room and the pastors come and they say prayers, and we would always do that every day. And they kept asking me, "Do you want to go to the chapel?" And I was like, "No, I don't want to go anywhere. I want to be right here." And that was the day I was like, "Okay, I need to go to the chapel." And the nurse took me up there, and I just remember, like, what is happening? Like, what is going on with him? Am I going to lose him? Is he going to die? How are we going to get through this experience? I have a baby. I don't know what to do. And that was the time when I just was reaching out to God and saying, "I really need help. I really need strength. Please, bring it." And boy, oh boy, did she bring it, because the community was supporting us. They put on a big, huge fundraiser for us. I mean, these things. I mean, we just could not have made it through any of this without this amazing community. And it was kind of crazy because I never wanted to leave Tony. So I didn't have a house. We just had the house with boxes. So I packed a bag every morning, like I was either going to stay or go home, because if he wasn't comfortable with the nurse that was coming in, or if things had, gotten worse, I wasn't going to leave. But if I did leave, I went home to my mother-in-law's because I had a baby that was still there that I needed to take care of. And so every day was that day, right? I walk in the hospital room in the morning with a big smile on my face and make sure that I'm positive for him, because I'm looking at him laying in this bed and he's completely miserable and he can't talk to me. So I'm talking, and I have no problem talking. So every night I walked out, I got into the elevator, and that's when I would let it out. I would cry, and I would, on the drive home, I would cry and get it out, and then do it all over again in the morning, come back and be with him. And that's what I needed to do. I needed to be there for his, support for him. And like I said, the community just wrapped themselves around us. And thank God for Tony's family, because his mom was a nurse and she took some time off so she could help with me and with the baby. His stepdad, it was respiration person, RT. So he could come in, read his charts, kind of give me a little bit of information, because I had no idea what was going on. And just the people around that I could ask questions to, and then I started this journal. One of the nurses in the hospital, she said, "Julie, you should really be journaling this." And I thought, okay, well, good. That'll give me something to do while I'm sitting here every day in complete silence next to my husband. So I started journaling, and I got up early this morning so I could be prepared for you, and was reading, and little tiny moments of him moving his finger, or the day that they sat him up for 30 seconds. It was like, such a big major milestone with us. And just to watch him every single day. We were in the ICU for 2 months, and he was on the trach pretty much the entire time. And then we moved from the ICU to a step down unit, or the next unit there, for about a week. And then we got into inpatient recovery. We were there for another month because we wanted to have a room where Sophia could come in, because she was 7 months old at the time. And ICU's tough with the baby. He had cords and things all over him, so he was always kind of concerned about that. So and then there was 6 months of outpatient rehab. So it was a complete year from beginning to end. He lost his job. We lost our house that we just got. Um, all those things. But in the end, it didn't matter. He was alive. He was okay. We didn't need the house. We didn't, all the things, and things worked out in the end later. But what an experience to go through, right? And just
Right,
have
right.
yourself in that position where the community's helping you, because you and I both know we're always helping everybody else, right? So
Yeah,
to
yeah,
have that
exactly.
in
Well,
your favor is totally different.
yeah, and I mean, I guess the question for you would be is, and the person I was thinking of was something else, but there's definitely, I've heard of the Guillain-Barré syndrome before. So how long was the road for Tony, like to now? He's like, he's function. I see him helping out at events and everything else. Like,
Yeah.
how long was it
Yeah.
before you saw 80% of the old Tony back?
A good year and a half, maybe 2 years. Yeah. He still has these really weird residual things that happen.
Yeah.
Like, um, it's so weird to see what happens to the body when you're just laying there not moving, right? So the weirdest things, like his fingers and his feet were just so dry, and they have a thing called thrush on your tongue. He wasn't eating, he wasn't swallowing, he wasn't drinking, so his tongue became almost like a coat of wool was over it. And then his eyes were starting to get blurry, and just, I mean, that's when I was like, oh my gosh, what else is going to happen to him? I mean, everything was just deteriorating. And then, when you're laying there, and they put those little things on your legs to make sure that the blood's circulating. And when you're laying there for that long, not moving, so many things happen to your body, and it's so crazy to see.
So for you, like, how long was it until, you saw marked difference where he was kind of back in the swing, like the old Tony that you remember? Like, was it a year? Was it 6 months? Was it 5 years?
Over a year for sure. I mean, the whole recovery was a year completely. And then I would say, him just getting back to normal, maybe another 6 months. I mean, the outpatient recovery, like I said, he had to learn to walk, talk, breathe, eat, swallow, all those things again. So that was a process. And then once he came home, because it was December 22nd, like I had said, and he wanted to be home for, it was going to be our daughter's first Christmas. So he was like determined to get out of there. And I remember the guy saying to him, so when do you plan on getting out of here? And he said, I'm getting out of here for Christmas to spend it for my daughter. They were like, that's a good goal. And he goes, no, out this door, out that window. I am leaving here to be home with my daughter for Christmas. But the process just of getting home, we had to have the shower chair and the toilet chair and the walker, and he wasn't able to walk. So the good thing was our daughter was only, just an infant toddler, so he was able to get on the floor and crawl with her, which was really good rehab for him, and really good bonding time with the two of them too as well. But I was driving everywhere and taking him everywhere, and like I was telling you earlier, the caretakers, right? They just kind of get shoved to the side. And there was a moment when I came home, and we had a big party, of course, for him when he came home, and all the things. And everyone's so focused on Tony and his recovery, and obviously we all were. But there was one moment when I was like, what about me? Like everything I've been going through. And I never said that out loud, of course. I said it to myself, crying in my room. But it was like, you think, the caretakers really need support, and all the things that the patient's going through, because I gave up everything to be there with him, which of course I would, but I
Yeah.
had the new baby, I had the new house, I had all the things that I was dealing with, and taking care of a husband that was basically,
Yeah.
disabled. So
Yeah, no,
yeah,
and
it's
it's you can
crazy, right?
I would imagine it's mentally and physically exhausting, like both,
For
because
sure,
you're
for
constantly doing
sure.
it. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. I think about it now, and I see friends who have, severely disabled children that, you see them over time, and it's just mind blowing to me of how much work that they do, and it's out of love, like there's no question.
Of course, of course.
And but yet at the same time, you can see them, like at the point your kids are at a certain age, or your daughter's 12, you can sit down and relax for a little bit. Like in that scenario, some of them it's you're on 24/7, 365. And it's what we do as parents, right? it's
Of
just
course.
it's just such an undertaking, trying to take care of a baby and then a husband who's, you know, been paralyzed, and trying to help him read, learn, and cook and clean and help, and and even going to the bathroom and everything.
Yeah.
I can't imagine the exhaustion. And then still, by the way, I'm still trying to keep a job, do
Yeah.
what I need to do to get through, make ends meet. Yeah, it's mind blowing, and that's what's awesome about seeing communities come forward in that way. My grandfather, my dad's dad, was diagnosed with polio young, and so my dad from an early age helped, like he would do everything around the house when he was like 11 and on, maybe even younger, because my grandfather's whole right side of his body was basically paralyzed.
Yeah.
And so you look at those things and go like, gosh, my grandma back in the 50s was the sole breadwinner as a woman who you aren't sole breadwinner. Like, she was a
Yeah.
secretary at a high school.
Yeah.
And so trying to make that work, yet their communities came forward and helped them pay rent one month because they were trying to get through it, especially early on. And to see people come out in that way and support is just such a gift that you can't really explain. So I have a question for you. I was talking to somebody about it the other day. Is when people spoke to you about it or wanted to come by, was it, like, was it always just appreciated when they would bring something, whether it was, like, oh gosh, I don't eat cheese, but they brought over a
Yeah.
lasagna. Like, I would assume people helped in those ways.
Yeah.
How was that for you?
It's funny because thank goodness we were at the Queen, so we were in Napa, and everybody could see us. But it's funny because I ate at the cafeteria every single day, and at one point it was like, "Do you work here?" And the nurses were like, "Tell them that you do, so you can get free food." Because I was there on Thanksgiving, I was like, "Please, hopefully they have turkey in the cafeteria today." But it was kind of moment by moment with him. So if somebody said, I'm coming over to see Tony, okay, it's a good time. But again, this was the ICU. So you have to be buzzed in, and then, you can only have so many people. And it could change. Like if somebody showed up and 5 minutes later, I'm like, sorry, it's not a good time. So, okay, we'll come back later. And if like a family member came like from an hour away, and I was like, I'm so sorry. And they don't understand. They're looking at me like, I'm here. I came all this way. And I said, but you don't understand. You can't come in right now. I mean, it's bad enough to see him the way he is, but right now is just not a good moment. He has his good moments and he has his bad moments. So it just depended. I remember there was a night when he wanted his buddies to come over, and so they came, and I was like the interpreter, but I was like not in their conversation. So they both come in and they're talking their guy stuff, and we had the alphabet board and the flashcards, and so I was getting it took forever to get one sentence out, because we do row one, row two, row three, and to go that way with the letters, so we could get one word out, and then to get a whole sentence it took forever. So there are little things that we laugh about, that we had to get through because we had to do what we had to do, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, but thank goodness we were here, so we did have a lot of support, because there were times when someone was like, "Do you want me to sit with him for a little bit while you just go to Starbucks?" And it was like, "Yes, please, thank you." Um,
Yeah.
but you become friends with the nurses. My gosh, we became friends with so many of them, and every Christmas I would come back and bring Sophia and bring Tony and say, "Look, we're all here, we're all surviving, and everybody's okay, and thank you for all that you did for us." And the Queen of the Valley was just such an important part for us, and all the people that were there helping us. I mean, thank goodness we had them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's one of those things too when you look at it now and say like, gosh, it's just so nice when those are the things that you just don't appreciate until you really are in
Until
it,
you
right?
need it.
It's
Yeah,
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 it's like I was telling somebody, it's like hospice nurses, right? You really don't know it, you don't understand it, you don't, and then all of a sudden you have it and you're like, oh my gosh, they're
yeah.
amazing, right?
Hospice is
Um,
amazing.
and so seeing how that they give back in that way. What was
Yeah.
it, in your experience, did you have people say things that were just so wrong? Like, you were like, like good intentions, but like, you know,
Actually, my best friend came to visit me, and I've only been talking to her on the phone. She didn't live in town. She was in Southern California at the time. And when she came to visit, we went in to see Tony. I mean, there's no just talking, so it's just looking at him. Poor thing. Everyone's just staring at him, and we talked about it later. Like he's laying there, and everyone's giving him that, "Oh, poor thing," and he's like just looking at you, like, "Just get out of here."
yeah,
So we went into the cafeteria and had some food, because that was my spot. And my friend said to me, "Oh my gosh, Julie, I had no idea, until I could see him in person." And I was like, it's just hard to explain, what was going on. But until she was there and saw him in person, she really didn't know what was going on. So it
Hmm.
was like I wasn't lying, like, this is really
Yeah.
happening here.
Yeah. Well, and it
There's
was
a
good.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say a friend said that somebody says to her, "Gosh, this is just so unbearable. I don't understand how you're even able to do that." And
Yeah.
I take that as a compliment because we're just getting through it as we can. This other person's like, "Thanks, like you're making me feel like I shouldn't be bearing this weight."
Right.
Like
Right.
so it's just the way that we sometimes we interpret those messages. Not that it's ever kind of right or wrong, but
Right.
that's what I was wondering. So
And then and I was looking at your stuff, and you said the same thing. People come up to you, how are you getting through this? And you're like, I have no other choice. I
right,
have to go on every single day. I mean, especially with me, I mean, I was getting up, packing, I didn't have a house. I was living, out of a suitcase and then a baby. And thank goodness I had the family to take care of her because I just wasn't able to. My focus needed to be on Tony and his recovery. And it was so hard for him, because he wasn't able to see her. And my mom blew up this big picture of her with her face, and it sat in the hospital room, and that's what he looked at every single day. And it's just funny because we just moved and we found it, and I was like, do we need to keep this? And he's like, just let me have one more moment with it, and he sat there and looked, and he's like, that's all I looked at, for 2 months. My
yeah.
view was that picture of her, and there were
Of
cards
your
everywhere,
daughter.
of our daughter. Yeah,
When
yeah, because so
when you
little.
first said that, I for whatever reason when you said my mom did, I
Thought
was
it was
like,
me.
so he's looking at a picture of his mother-in-law for 2 months. Lucky, like
Yeah.
most people would be like, oh, thanks for that.
Okay, great.
What are you trying to do to
Yeah,
me?
yeah.
That's
And I
funny.
have to tell you this story because it's so funny. It's a reference. You've seen the movie Castaway, right?
Mhm.
With Tom Hanks.
Yeah,
And remember when he finally is leaving the island and he makes it over that water, and he's fine, and he looks back and that music comes on, and he has this look in his face like, oh my gosh, I'm leaving this place that I've been so comfortable with for so long. It's been his place. And Tony and I, the day that we were actually leaving the hospital, I mean, we had to pack up all this stuff. We'd been there for 3 months,
yeah.
pack up all his stuff, and we get in the car, and we're both looking at each other driving away. And it was that moment of, oh my gosh, we're leaving the hospital. We're leaving this comfort place where everything that he needed was right there. And now it's up to me, it's up to his family, and everybody to take care of him. And every time we watch that movie, we always think about that. We're like, oh my gosh, remember that moment? We're leaving, and are we ready for this?
When he went home at that point, was he able to walk with a walker?
Yeah, barely. I mean, it's funny. I look back at pictures because we basically got home before Christmas, and it
Yeah,
was Sophia's first Christmas that we didn't even get to have in our new house. We were
right.
at his mother's, so we lived with her for probably a month before we could, because we didn't have a house to go home to, so we needed to stay with his mom so that they could help too. And yeah, he used the walker, shower chair, toilet chair, just all the things that he needed, and then getting in and out of the car was okay. And then we did some outpatient rehab over here at the Queen for
Right.
another 6 months. So that was me driving him there every day, and
Yeah.
he had to learn, like I said, he learned had to learn to walk, talk, eat, all the things all
Yeah.
over again. So kind of crazy.
How did you balance, like, as the caretaker, how did you balance the, like, still being able to run the chef's market and do all those things? Like,
Family
you
and
go,
friends, man. Oh,
yeah.
thank God for his family. Thank God for our friends, because I mean, somebody had to do something. I mean, like I said, we ended up losing our house because we just bought the house. And I remember I hadn't even made the first payment yet. And that they were calling me saying, we understand that your husband's in the hospital and are you gonna be able to make the payments? I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, no problem. And I did for a while. And then I'm like, okay, because, thank goodness the Queen helped with all of that. We had great insurance, but when the bill came out, it was $1 million, like, for all of his time being in there. But the insurance covered it, thank goodness. But 3 months stay in ICU, and and all that outpatient rehab, it was very, very expensive. But thank goodness his coworkers were sending him checks and vacation hours, and like I said, the benefit that our friends in Napa put on for us in December. When people are spending money on presents and holiday, they came to our fundraiser and they did that. And I have to share a story. Tony wasn't able to be at the fundraiser. Of course, he was still in the hospital. But our friend Stu, who does all the sound system and stuff, he came to the hospital and he recorded Tony saying something because nobody had heard him speak for so long, and at the benefit we played that. And everybody, of course, is bawling, I'm bawling, I'm crying. It was like, he can talk.
Yeah.
Yes, he can talk. He
Yeah,
can talk.
that's
It's so
awesome.
funny.
Those are those moments that, it's kind of reality sits in, right? And then that's when
Yeah.
people, like people ask all the time, like, oh my gosh, how do you guys do it? How do you stand there? And I'm like, I look to Denise Horn, and I was like, man, she inspires me every
Yeah.
day to keep moving forward. And ironically, I get messages from Denise likewise in return. It's just like we all look to each other and try to help each other and do what we
Yep.
can in that way. And I mean, that's
Absolutely.
all we can do, right? Is
And for
communicate.
me, that husband that was with his wife that was in the same time, thank God that they put us together in the hospital because, like I said, she had been there since July 3rd, and we
Right.
got in there on October 1st. And they lived up in like Rockland, so that guy was driving every day to be there because they were like here for a wedding, and she ended up going into the hospital. And they put him together with me, and he said some things that I will never forget. He said he doesn't have cancer, he's not gonna die, and he's gonna get better. And I was like, oh my gosh, they were the most powerful things that he could have said to me. And I said, you're absolutely right. And that's exactly what it was. He wasn't going to die from this, and he was going to get better. And we were just looking for that recovery road, and it was
Yeah.
long, but it happened. I didn't
Yeah.
lose my husband, and I'm so thankful for that
Yeah.
because it could have been worse.
If you were to give anybody advice, like, and maybe not even just Guillain Barre, like, if you were to give any advice, like, okay, so you're like dealt this, like, obviously not a death, that you look and you're dealt this and go like, what did you tell yourself each day, or what advice could you give someone that's now facing something like this, or something that they're having to just tackle, and how do they find that resilience?
Boy, you got to surround yourself with your village. I mean, I'm so thankful that during that time, my mom was still alive at the time, and she was taking my daughter on the weekends. And then, and I would have like date night with Tony, and I would stay the night there on Saturday night, and I would sleep in the chair next to him. And that was just our night, that I would stay the night. And everybody was helping. Everybody did something for me. And I was looking back at my journal and reading through it, and I remember saying, "Thank God I have my family. Thank God I have all these people to give me a little time too." Because I would go in my car just to get out of the hospital room and cry. Just sitting there and cry, and then go back in with a smile on my face because I don't want to show him that I'm upset and sad. I need to give him positivity. So I had to give myself the strength to walk in there every day with a smile on my face so that I could show him, hey, it's not so bad. We're all doing fine. You just get better. Don't
Yeah.
worry about it.
Yeah. Well, and now, so moving to today, Tony back out golfing, helping with events. Like what, like is so full old Tony? Are there certain changes that, just different? I mean, we're all getting older, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Can we blame it on that? It's so funny. There was a woman that showed up. So when we were having the benefit, they put a big ad in the marketplace about the benefit, and two people came from out of town. We don't even know who they are. One woman had it back in the 70s, and she was in the hospital for, I want to say, close to a year. Because like I said, back then they didn't really know what it was. They didn't know how uh, to fix it. And she said, of course, she goes, look at me. I'm totally fine. I'm back to normal. I golf. And she goes, and whenever I have a bad golf game, I just blame it on the Guillain Barre. And he's like, all right, good. Thank you for that. I'm going to use that every once in a while. But
Right.
he's he has these weird little things like his eyes water when he eats. I don't know if it was because his eyes got really blurry and weird when he was in the hospital, so I don't know if it had anything to do with that. And every once in a while, his feet act weird. They just, get weird on him. And when he does that, when he walks, I'm like, look at him. I'm like, you're okay, right? Because that was the day that we went to the hospital. He was walking really weird and weak, and I was like, what is wrong with you? And he said, I don't know, because that those first few days, like it was his teeth and his fingers were numb, and then his feet started to turn numb, and so we knew it was a neurological thing. So those little tiny things, but that's it. I mean,
Yeah.
he's good.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, Julie, I appreciate you coming on here. I mean, like I said, I've been amazed at how many people are checking out the podcast to just hear stories of resilience and faith
Yeah,
and hope and kindness and grief
yeah,
and resilience and so hearing stories like this that are filled with hope, that are a little bit less about losing someone.
yeah.
Alex, my son, always gives me, he's like, all you do is talk about people that have died. I'm like, thanks.
And we could
So
have talked about that, but we got to try and talk about other
exactly,
things.
exactly. No, I
And
appreciate you coming on.
and I
What were you
met
gonna say?
so many amazing people through this. I mean, I did meet Colleen, which that's how I became friends with Megan, because Colleen was a
Oh, okay.
nurse at the Queen.
Yeah,
And I just met so many people through it, and we've told everybody at the Queen knew our story. So we always said, if there's anybody that comes in with this, please call us because Tony would talk to the patient and I would talk to the caregiver. And so
right.
we've done this now a few times. There were a few people at the Queen that we went in and saw, and then we
Yeah,
even went and saw somebody in Concord or something. But
yeah.
we have to be able to help other people in the same situation, right? I
Right.
mean, that's
Well,
the
that
only way we
support
can
network
all be
really is
together.
there. Right. That's what a lot of times for me, it's people that have lost a child want to talk to
Yeah,
somebody that's lost a child versus a
yeah,
therapist. And that's okay. Like it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. Doesn't mean therapists aren't doing great work and
right.
there's just not enough of them out there. But that's just, everybody's doing this in their own way. So kudos to you for doing that. And I'm sure those families have really appreciated that
When
communication
it
and
just fills my heart. It's like if I could
yeah,
help somebody from this grief and this horrible experience that we went through, then
yeah.
it's worth it, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, Julie, thanks for joining me today, and when hopefully I get a chance to see you soon in person. But in the
We
meantime,
will.
all right, we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.